Hey everybody, this is Andre here with the Kevin Breeze channel, and in this video, we're going to be doing a comparison between the Motorola Moto G Stylus 2021 and the Samsung Galaxy Note 20 Ultra. To get some more information on the pricing and availability of these devices, be sure to check the links in the description. The link for the Samsung Galaxy Note 20 Ultra will take you right to this phone on Samsung's website, where a lot of the time they have some great trade-in deals that you might not be able to find anywhere else. That being said, let's get started. So the Moto G Stylus has a 6.8-inch IPS LCD display with a resolution of 1080p, a PPI of 386, an aspect ratio of 20:9, and a screen-to-body ratio of 84.8%. The Samsung Galaxy Note 20 Ultra has a 6.9-inch dynamic AMOLED 2X display with a resolution of 1440p, a PPI of 496, an aspect ratio of 19.3:9, and a screen-to-body ratio of 91.7%. The Samsung Galaxy Note 20 Ultra has much thinner bezels and a noticeably larger screen, as well as a more high-quality display. The display for the Moto G Stylus is not bad either. It does have pretty thin bezels with an 84.8% screen-to-body ratio. It's not bad, and having thinner bezels overall gives the phone a much more modern look. So really, as far as the design goes, especially with these hole punch front-facing cameras right here, they are both gonna look really good. If you're doing more basic types of content consumption, like just streaming videos and that sort of thing, then I would definitely say the Moto G Stylus should be enough for you. But if you're doing more intense things like gaming, where you really do need those good graphics, or video editing as well, then the higher quality display and slightly larger screen of the Samsung Galaxy Note 20 Ultra is definitely going to come in handy there. Now for the front-facing cameras, the Moto G Stylus does have a 16 megapixel camera, and the Note 20 Ultra has a 10 megapixel camera. Now we're going to see in the demonstration which one is actually higher quality, as the megapixels of a camera does not really determine the quality in and of itself. Now both of these phones have 128 gigabytes of internal storage with microSD expansion. I always say 64 gigabytes of internal storage is a good minimum, and both these phones have 128, so you're definitely going to be getting a lot of space on this phone for whatever you need. I downloaded all my favorite apps onto this phone, as well as the system updates and everything on here. As you can see with the Samsung Galaxy Note 20 Ultra, it has a little bit more stuff on it with the images and videos, but not a whole lot. In general, neither of these phones have that much space occupied, with the Moto G Stylus having 19.7 gigabytes being used, taking up 15% of the space, and the Note 20 Ultra having 28.78 gigabytes being used, taking up only 22%. So really, you can see just with all the basic things that you might be using on a daily basis, it really doesn't take up much space. So you're gonna have a lot of space for whatever you might be using it for, whether you take a lot of photos and videos, have music on your phone, or if you just run apps that are a little bit larger, like games and that sort of thing, then you're definitely gonna have a lot of space. And if you do run out, you're always going to be able to expand the storage on either of these phones with a microSD card. Now the Moto G Stylus does not have wireless charging, but the Note 20 Ultra does. Wireless charging is typically a feature that you see in more high-end and flagship phones, so it's not a huge surprise that it's not in the Moto G Stylus. But then again, I do wish it was. I think wireless charging is a great feature that more phones should have, because for example, if your charging port gets damaged, then you're not going to be able to charge your phone and the phone is pretty much done for. Whereas if you have wireless charging, you're at least going to be able to charge the phone for a little bit while you figure out how to fix it or get a replacement or whatever you might end up doing. I think wireless charging is not only a convenient feature to have, but also a good backup and last resort if anything happens to your phone. Now both of these phones have a fingerprint scanner and face unlock. It's really nice that they have both. I like to have different options to unlock my phone depending on the situation. Now the fingerprint scanner for the Samsung Galaxy Note 20 Ultra is on the screen itself, but the Moto G Stylus has even better of a location in my opinion, with the fingerprint scanner being right on the power button. I really think that's hard to beat. Whether you do it on purpose or just out of habit, you're likely to touch the power button when you're going to unlock your phone. And having it on the power button just makes it so fast to unlock. But let's give these both a try and see how they perform. Starting with the Moto G Stylus. One more time. Very fast and responsive, not a whole lot to say about it. It works really well, fingerprint scanner's in a great location. Let's try the Note 20 Ultra. One more time, let's go. So as far as performance goes, both of them work pretty much the same. They're really fast and responsive. No complaints about either of them. The location really comes down to preference. Having a fingerprint scanner on the power button, in my opinion, is the most convenient way possible. But at the same time, it doesn't look nearly as nice and modern as having the fingerprint scanner on the display like the Note 20 Ultra has. So it really comes down to personal preference. If you're using the fingerprint scanner a lot and really don't like face unlock, then I could definitely see the fingerprint scanner on the power button being a little bit better for you. But if you don't really use the fingerprint scanner, or if you don't really care that much, then having the fingerprint scanner in the display does look a little bit nicer and gives the phone a more modern look. Now, taking a look at the camera setups. So the Moto G Stylus has a 48 megapixel rear camera, an 8 megapixel ultra wide camera, a 2 megapixel depth sensing camera, and a 2 megapixel macro camera. Really good setup. The Samsung Galaxy Note 20 Ultra has a 108 megapixel rear camera, a 12 megapixel ultra wide camera, and a 12 megapixel telephoto lens. Now, even though it doesn't have a macro camera, the telephoto lens, as you'll see in the demonstration, does make up for this. So really, both of them have a great camera setup, both having really high megapixel rear cameras and some great features like the ultra wide camera and macro cameras. So this is the rear camera for the Moto G Stylus. It does look really good. The colors are well balanced. The image is crisp. I have no complaints about it. And I definitely wouldn't mind using this camera on a regular basis. This is the ultra wide camera for the Moto G Stylus. It's really nice. There's no distortion or anything, and the color looks good. With some phones, when you use the ultra wide camera, it gets a little blurry, but this is not the case. The image still looks crisp, so that's great. This is what the macro camera looks like. Great detail. I have no complaints about this either. Definitely a high quality macro camera. This is the front facing camera for the Moto G Stylus. Again, the image is really crisp. The colors aren't perfect, but they are really good. I would definitely say this camera is acceptable for professional purposes if you're making content, that kind of thing. If you're using this camera for content creation, I definitely think it would be okay. This is portrait mode for the Moto G Stylus. It does look good. Of course, this camera between me and the phone isn't really helping, but the subject and the background are definitely recognized properly and it's blurred appropriately. It's not too much, not too little, and you can also control the blur amount here, which I really like. Now, this is the camera mode for the Samsung Galaxy Note 20 Ultra. The camera is, as expected for a phone of this level and a camera that's 108 megapixels, it is very high quality. The colors are really well balanced and the image is super crisp. It's really hard to beat a camera on a phone like this. But at the same time, compared to the Moto G Stylus, although this camera being from a flagship phone that is wildly more expensive, at first glance, it's not that much better to the point where it makes the Moto G Stylus camera look bad. It is a lot better and more professional looking, but at the same time, there comes a point where the difference is only incremental. And I feel like the Moto G Stylus does hit that point where it does look good, especially if the purpose for your photography is something like social media. Keep in mind that social media platforms do tend to compress images, so the quality of a picture taken on a camera like this, even pictures taken on DSLRs, do get compressed down to a certain threshold. So if you take a picture on this phone and take a picture on the Moto G Stylus and post both of them on a social media platform like say Instagram or Twitter, then most likely, even though the Samsung Galaxy Note 20 Ultra does have a much higher quality camera, most likely the two pictures are gonna look really similar. This is the ultra wide for the Note 20 Ultra. This ultra wide is a lot wider than the Moto G Stylus, and the image is a lot more crisp. The colors are a little bit more clear, definitely higher quality. This is the telephoto lens. As you can see, it really does replace the macro camera. You really don't need a macro camera when you have something like this. You can get really close up, super detailed pictures. And really, I think it's more convenient than a macro camera because with a macro camera, you actually have to move it closer to the object. Whereas with the telephoto lens, you can keep the phone right where it is and just zoom in and it'll have the same effect. This is the front-facing camera for the Samsung Galaxy Note 20 Ultra. I'm honestly really impressed by this camera. It's super high quality. This camera is definitely better quality. The image is a lot more crisp and the colors are more balanced. Overall, just a lot more professional. Now, if you're doing serious content creation, something like streaming or even just taking lots of pictures and you use your front-facing camera a lot for that, I would definitely say that a higher end device like this is really going to make a difference. This is the portrait mode on the Samsung Galaxy Note 20 Ultra. As you can see, it's very professional. Even though we have this camera right in between me and the phone, it still does recognize my face as the subject and blurs the background really well. And I really don't see any flaws with this. In addition, you can also change a lot of different settings. Not only the blur, but you can do all these modes. You can even do weird things with it, like some sort of fringing mode, graying out the background. There are tons of different things you can do with this. And one thing I really like about phone cameras that have all these settings is when I'm taking pictures, I always like to have as much control over the photo when it's being taken as possible, because then when you go to edit the photos, you might not actually have to do that much because it's already been taken care of in the phone's camera itself. So overall, going in, we already pretty much knew that being a flagship phone in a much higher level, the Samsung Galaxy Note 20 Ultra was going to have a better camera than the Motorola Moto G Stylus. I was surprised by the difference because really, unless you're doing some serious content creation or actual photography, then the Moto G Stylus still wasn't really that bad in comparison. Sure, the Note 20 Ultra has a much crisper image, a lot better colors, and a lot of different effects and features that the Moto G Stylus doesn't have, but at the same time, I still would really not mind using the camera for the Moto G Stylus for most situations. That being said, if you're doing serious content creation and photography on a professional level, then absolutely the Samsung Galaxy Note 20 Ultra does have a far superior camera. The quality of this camera probably competes with a lot of DSLRs, let alone smartphones. But really, when you're making this decision, you really have to think about if you really need a camera this high quality, because if you're not taking pictures on a professional level, then the camera for the Moto G Stylus really should work fine. Now, internally, the Moto G Stylus is getting 4 GB of RAM with a Qualcomm Snapdragon 678 processor. I ran a Geekbench 5 benchmark test on this phone a little while ago. It has a single core score of 538 and a multi-core score of 1588. Definitely not bad. Now, the Samsung Galaxy Note 20 Ultra is getting 12 GB of RAM with the Qualcomm Snapdragon 865 Plus processor. It has a single core score of 981 and a multi-core score of 3266. So as you can clearly see, the Samsung Galaxy Note 20 Ultra has a much more powerful, much faster processor. As far as performance goes, it's on a completely different level, but at the same time, the Moto G Stylus does have a good processor as well. If you're doing basic to moderate activities like content consumption, web browsing, and then of course your basic mobile phone activities, then the Moto G Stylus should still work out fine, and you're probably not going to notice a huge difference. But if you're doing more intense things like video editing and gaming, and if you're doing a lot of content consumption and need a really fast phone for something that's kind of sensitive, then of course the Samsung Galaxy Note 20 Ultra has a lot more power that's definitely going to come in handy. Now, the Moto G Stylus has a 4000 milliamp hour battery that supports 10 watt fast charging. And the Samsung Galaxy Note 20 Ultra has a 4500 milliamp hour battery that supports 25 watt fast charging. Both of these phones really do have good battery life, and with the fast charging on both of them, they're going to be able to charge up a little bit faster, so that's great. Really, I don't think the difference between the batteries is going to be huge. Yes, the Note 20 Ultra does have a 4500 milliamp hour battery versus the 4000 milliamp hour battery in the Moto G Stylus, but at the same time, both are going to give you really good battery life. And when choosing between devices like this, it's really not going to be the battery life that's going to be the best deciding factor for you. Now, of course, one unique feature that these phones both have is the stylus, and we're going to test out both of them and see how they compare. Starting with the Moto G Stylus, the stylus pops out right from the bottom. Really nice here. It feels really sturdy. I don't feel any lag or anything like that. It's really responsive. When I'm swiping through the screens, it really just feels like you're swiping your finger on it. The pen is really responsive. It's not crazy fast, but really for what it is pretty decent. Moving on to the Samsung Galaxy Note 20 Ultra, we're going to test out the stylus real quick. Like the Moto G Stylus, it pops out right from the bottom. Really easy to reach. When I'm swiping through everything, it really does feel the same as the Moto G Stylus. There's no lag, not a whole lot to say about it. It feels reliable and it feels basically the same as when you're swiping your finger through the screens, so that is good. One thing I do like about this stylus that the Moto G Stylus doesn't have is this little crosshair. If you see really closely when you put the pen close enough, there's a little dot that follows the pen around. And I really like that. It makes it easier and more precise to click on things. Going to the note screen to test the pen functionality. Now in comparison, there was a little bit of lag on the Moto G Stylus, but this one has absolutely no lag. I never really used the stylus on these phones, so I didn't really know what to expect, but this feels like an actual pen. Excuse my terrible handwriting. This really does feel like an actual pen. The response is perfect, and it even has a little drawing sound. It's really unique. I didn't expect it to be this good. So overall, my general assessment between these two styluses, the Note 20 Ultra is of course a much better stylus, especially when it comes to the drawing and everything. When you put the stylus on the note sheet, it really felt like a normal pen. It even vibrated a little bit like a normal pen. It was a great experience. There was no lag. It was basically instant. Whereas with the Moto G Stylus, there was a little bit of lag and it didn't feel quite as high quality and professional. But again, when it comes down to general usability, I do think the Moto G Stylus does have a usable stylus, just not quite as high quality as the Note 20 Ultra. When it came to scrolling through the screens, it felt exactly the same. I didn't really notice any difference. Now, in conclusion, which one of these devices is better? Very clearly, the Samsung Galaxy Note 20 Ultra is a better device. It's just a lot more powerful, has a lot more features, much more high quality in every way. But when it comes down to what phone you should buy, that's a different story. Really, with all the features and benefits that the Moto G Stylus does have, there are not a whole lot of cases where it makes a lot of sense to get the Note 20 Ultra instead. Now, if you're doing super high-end activities like gaming, or if you're doing some sort of graphic design where you'd really benefit from the highest quality stylus you could get, or maybe video editing or photography or content creation, something very high-end that needs the most powerful, high-quality device you can get, then you're really not going to go wrong with the Samsung Galaxy Note 20 Ultra. Really, there are not very many phones, if any, in the market these days that actually beat it. But for everyday use, if you're just using your phone for normal activities, if you don't have anything business related that you do like content creation and that sort of thing, and if you're not doing gaming, anything like that, if you're just doing a lot of content consumption, occasionally like to doodle a little bit, or just want the benefit of a stylus, but other than that, just use the phone for basic activities like sending text messages and making calls and all that, then between the two, the Motorola Moto G Stylus is probably going to make a lot more sense for you, and you're not going to get a whole lot more value out of the Note 20 Ultra. The reason I say this is because unless you're doing all the high-end activities the Note 20 Ultra is meant for, then you're really not going to get the full value out of it. And with the huge price difference between these two, it makes a lot more sense to go with the Moto G Stylus because that's really all you're going to need in that situation. Again, if you guys want some more information about pricing and availability of these devices, then be sure to check the links in the description. The link for the Samsung Galaxy Note 20 Ultra will actually take you right to the phone on Samsung's website, where a lot of the time they run some great trade-in deals that you might not be able to find anywhere else. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, definitely leave a thumbs up and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video.